This is the Movers and Shakers podcast, episode number 10.
Welcome to the Movers and Shakers podcast, the place where high achievers share their secrets on how to take your life, career, and business to the next level. And now, here's your host, Rob Wilson.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 10 of the Movers and Shakers podcast. I am your host, Rob Wilson, and I am absolutely ecstatic that you decided to join us today because we're celebrating episode number 10. Now, I know it's not 100 and it's not 1,000, but 10 is a significant milestone to me, and I'll tell you why. Earlier this year, in one of my Money Monday segments, I suggested that people have a money mantra that they set at the beginning of the year that's going to guide their actions and their activities throughout the rest of that year. And my money mantra for 2014 was launch. And that meant that I wanted to get up off the couch. I wanted to get these ideas out of my head and into real life. And so, guys, getting episode number 10 of this podcast out into the real world is very significant, and it means a lot to me. Not only because I've been able to connect with and build relationships and learn from 10 amazing movers and shakers, but it's important because I've been able to connect with and inspire you into action. I've gotten tons of feedback from listeners all over the world. And listen, guys, you have downloaded the podcast in more than 37 countries. And you've shared with me all of the things that you've learned in the podcast so far and how you're implementing these things in your life, your career, or your business right now. And that's what excites me the most. So today in this episode, we're going to talk about how to climb the corporate ladder. We've had a number of very, very successful entrepreneurs on the show, but I know there are also many of you out there that want to reach the pinnacle of your career in the corporate arena. So today on the show, we've got Kat Cole, who's the CEO of the billion-dollar brand Cinnabon. Now, you know Cinnabon, the company that makes the delicious cinnamon rolls that you absolutely cannot resist in the mall or in the airport. Well, Kat has an amazing story. In this episode, she shares with us how she overcame a difficult family life, how she eventually dropped out of college, but most importantly, how she made the most of her opportunities and how she started as a hostess at Hooters, became a vice president at that company, and then made it all the way to CEO of Cinnabon by age 35. Kat has also appeared on the hit CBS show Undercover Boss, and she's the youngest executive to ever appear on that show. She's opened stores and expanded brands all over the world, and she's got invaluable advice for you on how you can accelerate your own path to becoming CEO at your organization. So you'll want to grab a pen and pad, but if you can't do that because you're driving or you're running or you're working out right now, we're going to summarize all of her tips in the show notes at robwilson.tv/Kat Cole. So get ready. Consider this the first step on your path to CEO. Ladies and gentlemen, here's my interview with Kat Cole. All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Movers and Shakers podcast. I am your host, Rob Wilson, and I am just completely floored today that we have our guest, Miss Kat Cole, who is the CEO of a billion-dollar brand that I'm sure you all are aware of. And listen, I like to always support my guests by buying their products or whatever they have out there. This will probably be the most enjoyment I'll get out of supporting my guests. She's the CEO of Cinnabon, billion-dollar brand. Kat, thank you so very much for being here today.
My pleasure.
So a lot of the articles that come out about you, they tend to focus on this fact that, you know, at one point when you were 17 years old, you were a waitress at Hooters. But I've heard you candidly share some of your life story where you talked about challenges you had to overcome even before you started waiting tables at Hooters. Can you tell us a little bit about that and then how that led up to you maybe taking that initial job there?
Sure. The stories I typically share are that I am the oldest of three girls, three sisters, and we were raised by a single parent, by our mother. And when I was 9, my mom came to me and said, that's it, I'm done, we're leaving. And what she meant was we were leaving our father. My mom had an entry-level job that she had had for a long time, did not make a lot of money on her own, certainly not enough to keep the three of us girls in the same lifestyle that we had. But our father, who was and is a wonderful man, just had a period of his life where he was not a great husband and not a great father. He drank too much, he had other issues, and it was affecting the safety of our family and the happiness of our family. And so my mom said, that's it, it's worth taking the risk to go out on my own. And even though I don't make a lot of money, and we don't know that we're going to be able to rely on child support or anything else out there, I got to get the girls out of this situation. So we left. And for 3 years, my mom fed us on a food budget of $10 a week. I learned to love beanie weenies and potted meat and Spam and frozen lasagna and chili. And you know, it didn't seem at the time like a horrible thing. Looking back, I am amazed at how she pulled it off for that many years. She kept a roof over our head, which is more than I know what a lot of families are even able to have. So we were grateful for that. And I'm even more grateful looking back on it. It's not like we had to sleep on the streets or in a car. We had a home. And she did that, though, by working multiple jobs, continuing to work her way up and not being able to depend on anyone else. So I grew up seeing this incredible leader and role model not only deal with those challenges, but with such grace. You know, she never spoke ill of our father. And she was, for the most part, always so happy. And that's what I got to see. I got to see a woman who just figured it out and made it happen and was incredibly grateful for what she did have. And I remember thinking when she told me when I was 9 that we were leaving, you know, what took you so long? And it's funny, I've learned that often, just like that situation in business, that people around you who are closest to the action, like I was when I was 9, they know for a long time what the right thing to do is, long before you ever have the courage to pull the trigger and make the call. And so the trick is staying as close to those people as possible. So if you're a leader, staying close to your frontline employees. If you're a family member, staying close to what's going on in the kids' lives. Because if you have a suspicion that things are bad or that things need to change, or maybe there's just an opportunity that you should take, they probably know something about that. And if you stay close, maybe you'll make a smarter decision faster instead of waiting. And my mom, for a while, convinced herself that because she was married and because we had a nice home and a roof over our head, that even though things were bad, that really she should just be thankful for the situation she was in, because they could be so much worse. You know, at least she wasn't getting beaten up down on the ground every night. And yes, she had to deal with other issues, but to her, she was comparing herself to those who were worse off instead of comparing herself to people who were better off and saying, we deserve that. So that was part of what plagued her, what I think plagues a lot of people and a lot of women as they move up in life and in business, is you look around and you go, wow, I'm so grateful for what I have. Who am I to dare try to make things better? And to a degree, that gratitude is so important. But it can also work against you if you allow that gratitude to not make you feel like you deserve for yourself or for your family or for your company to make things better. And finally, something happened that just tipped her over the edge, and she said, that's it. Just because things could be worse does not mean I don't deserve to try to make things better. And so we left and went out on our own. And eventually she continued to move up in her own job, which was great because she didn't have to work as many jobs to support us. I was growing up. I started working when I was 15 in malls as soon as I could legally start working. And my mother remarried a wonderful man. And so everything ended up great. Even my father, who she divorced at the age when I was 9, has ended up in a much better place, I believe, because she made that call. And so that was the situation I grew up in. And so I had to start working early because of that. And eventually, you know, restaurants were another flexible avenue for employment. I worked in malls when I was 15 and 16. And then by the time I turned 17, I was old enough to be a hostess in a restaurant, not a waitress, and started working at Hooters as a hostess. And when I became 18, I moved out. I continued on after I graduated high school. I was the first person in my family to get into college on either side of the family. So I started college but stayed working at Hooters. I paid my way through college. I had no money coming in from anyone else. I had to work morning, noon, and night. If I wasn't in school, I was working. Lots of close open shifts, picking up shifts wherever I could to make extra money, to save it or to spend it on school or to just be an 18-year-old. And I had dreams, to go on to go to law school and go work for DuPont Chemicals and be an attorney. Clearly, that path did not work out for me because I had great opportunities when I was young to start traveling internationally to open other restaurants when I was 19. And I didn't have a passport. I'd never been on a plane. I had I had so many reasons to say no, I can't. But something in how I was raised, watching my mom, I kind of said, no, that sounds like a cool opportunity. I need to figure out a way to go. And I flew to Miami and got a passport in one day, which you used to be able to do back then, and called the restaurant headquarters and said, the answer is yes, I can go. And then I went to Australia and opened the restaurant and stayed there for 30 to 40 days and came back and picked back up my studies, and then eventually got more opportunities to start opening restaurants in Central America and South America. And before I knew it, I was failing college and still working at Hooters, and was faced with a choice. Do I go back to school and follow the proper path, or do I continue on this path to do the things I love, which is open franchises in other countries? And so I dropped out of school. So I am a college dropout who worked at Hooters, a child of a single parent. So on paper, I'm a little bit of a train wreck. But in person, I've had incredible experiences to help me become an effective leader and to teach me that risks, when you take them, when you know it's the right thing to do for the right reasons, like my mom when she ventured out on her own with us, or like me when I ventured out of the country for the first time, when you do it for the right reasons, those things always pay off.
So can we dig in a little bit there when you're on this progression, when you start as a hostess at Hooters? What was it about Cat Cole that allowed you to move up that chain and get these different opportunities? Because this doesn't happen to everybody who works as a hostess at a restaurant.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, in the restaurant industry, it happens a lot more than people realize. So the way I try to explain it is, if you work in a restaurant with a company that's growing, so I was working at Hooters. Hooters happened to be growing at the time, and they are opening new restaurants. All restaurants who are growing, who open new restaurants, look to their existing locations to find existing employees who can train the new employees in the new place. So that in and of itself is totally normal. Happens all the time, and I was one of 10 people who traveled to Australia to go open that restaurant. So in terms of the process, people who haven't worked in a growing restaurant chain, I get questions all the time. They'd go, this sounds fishy, or there's no way you got those opportunities, or they'll say even worse things, like clearly you had to, I'll fill in the blank.
I know where you're going.
I mean? Clearly you had to do something to get the opportunity. And so first I usually have to explain that this is totally normal. Then I'm able to answer the question, which is yes. Then within the fact that that is a process that happens, they do choose and select people. So then within that process, how did I get selected? So a few things happened. One, I got selected when I was 19 after I'd been with the company for 2 years. In those 2 years, a couple of interesting opportunities happened. One day, the cooks quit. They just got mad. I forgot why. It has been so long. But they got mad and they literally all walked out. It was like a protest. And in the middle of a shift. So here I am. I'm the Hooters girl. I'm working on the shift. I need those customers to get their food so that I make my tips so that I can pay for my college and my car. So part of it, my reaction was out of support, that if I don't help figure this out, I'm not going to make any money. The other part was to just be helpful and be curious. So what happened was me and a couple of our other Hooters girls and the manager at the time, we all jumped back in the kitchen and started cooking and got the food out and helped. And so what happened was, not only did I help fix a tough situation for our restaurant, as did a few other people on the shift that day, but I learned about how to work in the kitchen. I grew a fondness for working in the kitchen, and so I started picking up some kitchen shifts. I would help out whenever it was needed. So fast forward from that, a manager needs to leave early one day, and they need somebody to count the cash and work on the schedule and what's called check out, which is a process by which you reconcile all the money from each server every night. You need to check out the server, make sure they've done their closing duties to clean up the restaurant before they go home. And so I said, I'll help. I've been here long enough, and you can trust me. I'm responsible. I'll help check out the other servers while you get ready to go. And so I helped out with management. And so over the course of a year, when I was 18, I had worked in the kitchen, helped out training kitchen employees, helped with management duties, worked the bar. And so just by way of being curious and wanting to learn these new things in the restaurant, was I able to meet those needs? But I wanted to make sure that I was able to help out in the restaurant and support myself. So I did all these things in this year. Fast forward another year, this phone call comes from the corporate office, and they ask the general manager, who was a woman, who herself had been a Hooters girl many years prior, who I'd grown just such respect for and who taught me a lot. This person at the corporate office said, we need you to recommend your top employee who you can trust the most, who will be able to go and train other employees and deal with the challenges that will come along with opening the first of our brand on a new continent. And so she recommended me. That's how it happened. And then when she came to me, she said, hey, we're opening a restaurant in Australia. They're putting together the team of best employees from around the country. I think you could go. I think you'd do a great job. And for a minute, I thought, I don't have a passport. I've never been out of the country. I'd only been out of the state twice. I'd never been on an airplane. Remember, I grew up in Podunk, Jacksonville, with not a lot of money and resources, so I'd certainly not been a world traveler. But I called my mom. She said, if you fly to Miami, so I had to buy my first plane ticket to Miami and stand in line and get a passport. You don't have to tell them you're doing it. You can go do that and fly back and call them and then say the answer is yes, I can go. And so that's what I did. They never knew I didn't have a passport. They never knew I had flew down to get it. All they knew is that I was the best recommendation for the top employee to do the job. Then what I did is the part where my own expertise, my own courage comes in is I didn't say, oh, I'd love to, but I've never been out of the country. I don't know if I'd do a good job, or, oh, I don't have a passport, so no, and then have to deal with the fact that after everyone would have gone, I would have figured out I could have gotten out in one day. So it was both the previous opportunities to be helpful, which resulted in learning and experience, and the good timing of being with a company that was growing and having a manager that had learned that she could rely on me and believed in me, and having the courage to say yes to the opportunity. So those were the things that really led up to that.
Did you have some foresight when you decided to just initially take that job at Hooters that, hey, this is a growing company, and maybe I'm going to have some opportunity here, or did you just sort of
no?
Right place,
I mean,
right time?
I was a 17-year-old senior in high school, about to turn 18, and I just thought working at Hooters would be cool. I got recruited to work there. I was working in the mall selling clothes, and this woman comes up to me with a business card, and it said Hooters Recruiter on it, and she gave it to me and said, hey, we're out looking for people who might meet the image to be a hostess or a Hooters girl or a bartender with us. And so we'd love for you to come in and fill out an application or just come check out the restaurant. Like all restaurants have recruiters and people who go out looking for workers. Mm-hmm. So I went in, and I grew up in Florida where Hooters started. So it wasn't that big of a deal like it was in other states around the country. There were so many of them, and it had been around so long. I mean, it was a little bit controversial, but it's Florida. We're used to people in shorts and bikinis and things like that. So when I went in and applied for the job, I thought, wow, this place looks fun. All I thought was, I can be a hostess, and then when I turn 18, I can actually be a waitress, which should help me make more money than working in the mall. And I need more money to support my, college and car and all the things that I needed. So that was it. I mean, not only did I not have foresight, in my mind, that was just a pit stop. It was just a way to make a little bit of money to help me through college, to get me to my ultimate goal, which I was so convinced I was going to get to, which was becoming an attorney for DuPont Chemicals, getting my engineering degree. I was an engineering major in college, and then going on to get my law degree. That was the plan. So the whole Hooters thing was just a way to help me with the other goal that I had. And the opportunity to travel really started to change that and teach me that maybe I had a passion and a purpose for something other than being an attorney for DuPont Chemicals.
So where did the confidence come from to take advantage of these opportunities, and how did this vision for your life develop, especially given what you shared earlier, the environment from which you came?
Well, I think it'd be giving me too much credit to say it was a vision for my life, because as I said before, I had a dream of going to do something really cool, being an attorney for DuPont Chemicals, because I'd probably seen a television show with a lawyer and thought, oh, that looks like something I could do. And literally, I'm sure I saw a paint can and saw DuPont on it and thought, that must be a big company. I'd like to go work for them. So it was a little foolish of me, actually, to think those things. But I've always had a little bit of extra naivete about me, where I understand the practicality of a situation, but I enjoy making things a little bit more possible in my own mind than maybe other people would like to see it. And I've always been a risk taker, trying out for every team that I could. And sometimes I would make the team, sometimes I wouldn't. I grew up on the debate team, track team, and cheerleading. So I think sports really do help build confidence in children, because you fail in front of other people, yet you still got to get back up and keep running or keep doing whatever the sport is. So I think sports played a role in me building confidence and not being afraid to fail. And my mom, watching her just deal with life. And even if things would go wrong, it still could always be so much worse. So I grew a good, healthy belief that if you try something, the upside is usually far better than the small downside if it goes wrong. And if it goes wrong, then, just like cheerleading, when I would fall, or track, when that time I was running the 400-meter hurdles and I hit the first hurdle and had to get back up and limp all the way to the end. Those are the times where you build that understanding that things will go wrong and you will fail and you will fall, but you can still get back up. And if you're a good person, there's still people who want you around and who are going to be rooting for you to get up and try again. So I was lucky. I really do empathize for children who don't have the opportunity to be involved in constructive activities when they're young, sports, academic competition, because that was such a big part of the confidence that I built. So when I would face new opportunities that were risky, I had some experience with taking risks. If you have no experience with taking risks, how can you believe in yourself enough to take a leap? And so, I think that was a big part of what gave me the courage to take the risk and to not be concerned that I didn't have a passport or not be worried that I had never been on a plane. To me, it was, not only was it exciting, but I always felt a little bit insignificant because of where I came from and because of the things that had happened in my family and because of some of the family situation. I always felt this burning desire to prove that I was not defined by where I came from. I didn't think anything ill or negative about the people who were still there. I just knew I wanted to be different. Not better or worse, because that's a very subjective point of view, but just different. I knew that in order to learn and grow, in my mind, the definition of how I could learn and grow was to leave. Was to just be somewhere different than where they were. So that meant they could have told me, hey, we want you to get on an airplane and go open up a location in South Carolina. And it would have been as exciting to me, almost as exciting as Australia, because it was still that definition of new and different and unknown and learning. And then once I got into it and did it a couple times and, opened these restaurants and was a part of these teams and realized I'm kind of good at this and I love it. And even when we make mistakes, we're still doing good things. Then that just builds your confidence. Then you realize, okay, I can take a bigger risk. So when they said, go open the first one in South America, but instead of being a part of the team, we want you to lead it. And I was 20 years old. I was like, oh, okay, let's do it. And because I had faith that I could serve others, that service mindset was always there in my heart and in my mind, just like it was when I was a waitress, that if you serve others, it's tough for things to go totally wrong. And if they do go wrong, it's not likely you're going to get crucified for it because you've been good to people. And so I had a little bit of probably false comfort in just saying, I'm going to be super nice to people and serve them. So if the building burns down, they'll forgive me, But it did give me the confidence to take more of those risks.
And those are amazing insights, and thank you so much for sharing all of those things. I hear it's pretty time-consuming running $1 billion brand, so I know you don't have all day. Are there some specific tips that you can give some aspiring young professionals out there who may want to perhaps run a big portfolio or a big brand one day? What are some specific things that they can start to do right now in their career to head them along that path?
One is know yourself. And I mean, honestly, know yourself. Know how you're perceived by others. Be honest about that. Ask people how you're perceived. Ask people what you can do to be more effective, because it's not until you know really who you are and how you're perceived that you can start to take control of that and leverage your strengths and at least be aware of the things that might be your downsides and weaknesses. So start getting good at that now. Ask for feedback now. I got an early start on that. Because I was in training and development, I was helping to train new employees. And every time I trained a new employee in that restaurant, they had to write a little critique of me. And so I got used to getting feedback, good or bad, and then started asking for it so I could get better, because you can be your own best coach. You don't have to wait for somebody to serve up your development on a silver platter. You can ask for things. If you really care, you can ask for it, be open to it, and then try to productively use that information to tweak and make changes so you're more effective. So that's one, know yourself. The second is know your environment and your audience. So once you know you, develop the strength of paying attention to every time you go to a new place. It's a new culture. If it's a new company, it's a new culture. It's not just countries where you cross cultures. It's crossing different areas of a state, different areas within our own country. Different companies have their own hierarchy and culture. People have been together for a long time. They have acronyms and language that they use in their company. And if you don't take the time to learn that and respect it and learn how to mesh your style with theirs, you miss some opportunities to be effective. Another tip I would say is give until it hurts. If someone needs help now, give them help. If someone's struggling, do what you can to help them. In that act of giving, you learn and you receive, but you also build connections. And there is nothing more important in building your life and your business than your relationships. That could be your relationships spiritually. It could be your relationships in person with other friends. It could be the relationships with your family, or the strategic alliances and partnerships you build with different businesses over time. All those relationships help you be more effective. Maybe when you need an answer, you can get it more quickly than, say, someone who's competing for the job that you want. When you need a new idea for a new opportunity, now you've got a network of people who you can talk things out with. The relationships really do matter so much in being able to elevate yourself. And it's tough because I hear people say, oh, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Well, that's not true. It is what you know, and it is who you know, but it's also what they know about you and what you've done for them. Why should anybody want to be on your team? Why should they want to see you succeed? Have you given them reasons to want to see you succeed? And helping them is usually the best way. So volunteer, give, whatever that looks like in your situation. I was talking to a woman who's worked for a family company for the last 20 years. And she said, the problem is they see me as the same person they saw me as 20 years ago. And I know what that feels like. I worked in Hooters for 16 years, and some of those people always viewed me as that young, dynamic Hooters girl moving up. And I understand it's just human. And so what I told her is, I said, you need to get out, stay in your company. If you love it, stay with it, but leave it once in a while and go volunteer somewhere. Go get reminded of who you are today. Go add value somewhere and build back up that confidence. Have somebody reinvest in your emotional bank account so that when you go to a situation that's maybe a little draining, or people don't view you exactly as the professional that you've become, there's something else that you can go to that helps beef that confidence back up. And a funny thing happens when you do that. Not only do you go refill your confidence, but when you come back to that situation, people can tell the difference. They say, gosh, there's something different. Did you cut your hair? Or are you more awake, or did you get good sleep? And it's just because you have confidence. And I think finally, and this is something that doesn't get discussed a lot when people talk about how do you become effective? How do you become a great leader and continue to move up in your career? You still got to deliver results. I know people who are so focused on what their next career move is that they're missing all the opportunities right now to build a great business, to do their job as it is today better than anybody else. And we have a practice in our company that I've been doing for a long time. It's called the hot shot rule. And the hot shot rule asks you to pretend today that you get fired and a new hot shot comes in to take your job. Hot shot, by every definition, has been doing it a long time, has a great track record, is awesome. Everybody wants to, be on their team. So a total hot shot. And what would that person, if you're honest, you got canned. And so their job today, this is the first day of the rest of their life in your job at your company. All the challenges that you've improved, not visible to them. All the dynamics of the company that maybe make you think you can't do something, not visible to them, because they're coming in with fresh eyes. And so what I challenge myself and my team to do is play the game and apply the hot shot rule to yourself every so often. I like to do it at least every quarter. Sometimes certain situations come up that make me ask that honest question of myself. What would a hot shot do if they took over your job today? Or if they were dealing with this problem? If you're honest, you'll come up with some answers that are probably different than what you're doing. And then the next question is, why can't that be you? Why can't you have the fresh eyes? Why can't you start to question things? Yeah, it's tough if you haven't questioned them in the past and people go, oh, you've been going along with this for, 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 3 years. And so what's changed? Why are you questioning it now? But I'd rather deal with that challenge than have the real situation happen where it's a hot shot who comes in and I'm either, maybe it's not something as severe as losing the job, but I miss out on the opportunity to make an impact or to have that visibility that can get the next opportunity. So be your own, worst critic and play the hot shot rule and challenge yourself to do things better. It goes back to that being your own coach thing. And then on the other side of it, to wrap up, is, and this seems a little bit contradictory, don't be too hard on yourself. You can't be all things to all people. You can't be a perfect husband, perfect mother, perfect worker, perfect brother. You can't be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. You got to do your best to be a good person, to give your personal best to the people who matter to you and to the businesses that you have chosen to spend your time with. And hopefully things stay fairly harmonious. And if not, hopefully you've built good relationships where someone gives you good, honest feedback and says, hey, you're not spending enough time at home, or wow, your work is really slipping. Hopefully you've built those relationships where you hear about it, but don't beat yourself up.
Wow. I mean, I don't even know what to say. I think we all got our little mini MBA today. Do you have a book out on the way or something? Because I know the audience is going to want more, but
one day.
Fantastic, Kat. Thank you so much. You're very gracious for spending your time with us today, and we learned so much in the time we were able to be with you. So, in return, I'm going out to the grocery store. I'm heating up the oven right now.
Nice.
I'm gonna allow myself some indulgence this evening. So
you deserve it.
But again, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Have a great one.
You too.
Well, there you have it, everyone. Episode number 10 of the Movers and Shakers podcast is in the books. And really, could there have been anyone better than Kat to appear on this milestone episode? I mean, you only have to listen to her for just a few moments to understand why she absolutely skyrocketed to the very top levels of every organization that she's been in. It's also Women's History Month in the United States when this episode is being released, so it's awesome to be able to shine a spotlight on a successful woman in business. So I have to send a very special thank you to Kat for carving out some time for us and appearing on the show. Now, there were so many key insights in this episode, but I want to take the time to highlight two of them, and the first one was taking risks. One of the things that I've gained from working with a number of professional athletes in my financial advisory practice is that it's so important to take risks if you're going to achieve great success in your field. And one of the ways you get comfortable with taking risks is to come to grips with the fact that you're going to fail sometimes. So guys, if you've never played sports, perhaps it's time for you to go out and get into a pickup league so you can get used to failing in front of other people, but getting back up and playing on. And the second key insight that I want to highlight is that you have to know yourself and how you're perceived by others. Oftentimes, the hardest thing for us to hear is feedback from others on our performance, especially when that feedback can be considered negative. But as Kat so eloquently pointed out, it's not until you truly understand who you are and how you're perceived that you can begin to leverage your strengths and be fully aware of the things that might be detrimental to your success. So what's this week's action item? We always end the episode with an action item because movers and shakers understand that they cannot get to the place that they want to be by standing still. So your action item this week is to reach out to 10 people in honor of the 10th episode of Movers and Shakers. And these 10 people should be a mix of your supervisors, your coworkers, and your friends and family. And ask them 3 simple questions. Number 1, how would you describe me? Number 2, what's my greatest strength? And number 3, what's the biggest thing that you think I could work on? And guys, I promise that if you reach out to these 10 people and you're ready to receive the feedback that you get from the answers of these questions, I promise that you can start to put the work in that will put you on the path to becoming CEO in your organization. So guys, once again, thank you so much for joining me on this monumental episode number 10 of Movers and Shakers. I'm so glad that you have been joining me since the very beginning. If you enjoy the show, I'd be grateful for a honest review in iTunes. You could do that at robwilson.tv/iTunes. And if you missed anything, if you don't have a pen and paper handy, you can get the links to everything that we talked about and highlights of Kat's advice to us in the show notes at robwilson.tv/CatCole, and that's Cat with a K. So guys, thank you so much again for joining us. I'll see you next time, but until then, you get back to work.